Welcome to the Writing of God. Today we start a new series getting into one of the darkest mysteries of the Bible. We're going to further our work on the celestial events in the heavens, the Moedim. What is God trying to tell us? Through this work, we have managed to take retrocalculation of celestial events like eclipses, lunar, solar, and other celestial events to pinpoint the exact timeline of the Bible and to establish not only is it the correct timeline of the Bible, but the correct timeline of history itself. The Bible and Israel do not exist in a vacuum. The correct timing, the correct chronology for them is the correct chronology for the world around them. And we'll use some examples to show exactly how we did that. But in this new series, we get to dive into God's calendar and the priesthood that He gave authority, blessings, and covenant over that calendar to do feast days and sacrifices and assembly throughout the centuries. Hold on to your hat. This is going to be a tremendously exciting series. And we're starting right now.
Join ancient language linguist, author, educator, and biblical archaeologist, Dr. Miles Jones, as he explores the writing of God.
Welcome. Today we get to dive into one of the greatest mysteries of the Bible, a story that goes so far back in time that has been practically erased from history. But never fear, we've been working for several years on the Moedim to establish the correct timeline of the Bible, the biblical chronology and the events of the Bible. In our book, Moedim, Celestial Events of the Heaven, what is Jehovah trying to tell us? And we have been able to correctly pin down every event in the Bible, when it happened. And this is where they attack you on the Bible. It is not valid because of the timeline. Well, guess what? The timeline works. And we're going to tell you about God's calendar, God's timeline, and the priesthood that was put in authority over it. But to do so, we have to go back to the beginning. The first principle, what is in the heavens is what God created and put in motion. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1. Second principle, any calendar that denies Jehovah is not of Jehovah. And believe me, there are plenty of pagan calendars out there. But what does God say? He says, I am Jehovah, that is my name. I will not yield my glory to another, nor my praise to idols. Isaiah 12:8. And let me tell you, Daniel 7:25 tells us that the beast shall speak great words against the Most High and try to change times, Moedim, and the law of Torah. So this will be used to confuse those who do not understand the Bible. The third principle, what God puts first is first. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Genesis 1:14. The days divided into darkness and light. The time is divided by the greater light of the sun. Genesis 1:16. It is a solar calendar. The time within the year is divided into seasons. And the days are divided into darkness and light, the day and the night. They are for signs and appointed times, Moedim. Now there is as yet in the Bible no mention of months or moons. So what is said first? That would be the division of the day between darkness and night. That yields us 4 days during the year that divide the seasons. The first one is the spring, the vernal equinox, when the time of darkness and the time of light is exactly equal. There's another one in the fall equinox. There is another day when the night and the daytime hours are exactly equal. That's the fall equinox. And then there are two others in between those. One in the summer, the longest day of the year, when the light is twice as long as the night is. And then another time in the winter, called the winter solstice, as opposed to the summer solstice. That's the shortest day of the year. It's called the winter solstice. And these 4 days separate the seasons. All you need is a sundial to figure this out. And it's been figured out since the 3rd millennium BC. The celestial events reveal the timeline of the Bible is correct. Now, we have spent years studying the archaeology of the Bible and proving that the biblical timeline is correct. How do we do it? We do it by studying celestial events. Lunar eclipses, solar eclipses, other celestial events. These can be read after the fact. We can predict eclipses. We can also retro-calculate them. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. All right, these are not idle words. He means this. Day after day they utter speech, and night after night show knowledge. Psalm 19:2. That's how we determine the correct timeline of the Bible, by retro-calculating celestial events that are mentioned in the Bible or in the records of the ancient cultures. That's how we do it, by looking at celestial signs in the heavens. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples because this is so crucially important. When Jehovah sent Jonah to Nineveh to warn them to repent or be destroyed, there was an eclipse. It was clearly recorded in the records of Nineveh. Now in Israel, that was during the reign of Jeroboam. And at the time of the prophet Jonah, he was sent to Nineveh. There was an eclipse, there were riots, there were plagues, and the people of Nineveh repented of their sins, and Jehovah did not destroy the city. That happened in 763 BC. The year, we know the year, the month, the day, the hour, the minute, even the second of that eclipse. That is how precise we can be about the timeline of the Bible. Let me give you another example. We're going to look at the Egyptian records of Amenemhat III. How do we do that? Well, he took the throne in 1698 BC. How do we know that? He and his father left a record of 40 lunar cycles. Now, the lunar cycles have sometimes 30 days, sometimes 29. It seems kind of random to us, but they actually are determined by the orbits of the planet, the sun, and the moon. Now, that was done on a supercomputer by David Lappin in 2001, precisely proving that indeed was the time of Amenemhat III. And more important to us, his vizier, his grand vizier. That's who we're really concerned about. During his reign, the most famous vizier of Egypt, Anku, renowned as the overseer of the fields and the keeper of the granaries of Anku, he took office under Amenemhat III. In the Bible, it calls him Zavaneath pa Aneach. Aneach in Hebrew translate to Anku in Egyptian. You may be figuring out who this is. This is our Joseph. Now, Amenemhat's vizier initiated a massive engineering project. Why did he do this? Because Amenemhat III had the vision of 7 years of plenty and 7 years of starvation. So Joseph initiated the granaries to store up the grain until the time when it would be needed. But he also dug a broad waterway to divert water from the Nile into Lake Moeris, 420 miles in circumference. Why did he do that? Well, because this was not really a drought. This was a flood, which actually raised the flood level of the River Nile above the 25-foot mark, which is normal. Now, if it's less than that, they would tax less. But if it became more than that, then they knew they'd have a more abundant harvest and they'd raise the tax. Yes, even 4,000 years ago, the governments of the world were trying to do this. So he built this. What happened was there was an incredible flood, right? It lasted for 7 years and it was still rising for another 20 years. So there's no plowing or planting. In a drought, you can plow and you can plant, but in a flood you cannot. And it says in the Bible that there was no plowing or planting because the fields were still underwater. So what did the Grand Vizier Joseph do about this? Well, he dug this waterway to divert water from the Nile flood, into the Fayum Basin. And that released the water that they needed to have an abundant harvest, but not flood it out where there would be no harvest. And then later on, they could release that water back into the Nile when it was needed. So he did the waterway of Joseph, which is called to this day the Bar Yosef, the waterway of Joseph. So that is an incredible story that we know because we have matched the celestial events mentioned in the Egyptian records and the story mentioned in the Bible, and it all fits perfectly. We know that this was the time of Joseph and his Pharaoh, Amenemhat III, a miracle story that comes straight from the Bible. So what we have here, Jehovah knows his timeline. He knows his calendar, and so do we. So we know his calendar is in the heavens. So it's not a question of what calendar we use. We only have to ascertain who did Jehovah put in authority over the calendar. And that's where we're going to get to next, in the very next episode.
Dr. Miles Jones will be right back with more of The Writing of God.
What is the Revelation of the Month Club? Well, let me tell you, the Hebrew Gospels are the most important biblical discovery since the Dead Sea Scrolls. It took 40 years for scholars to get those published and out to the public. If you're graduating high school, getting your first job, you would be in retirement before all the Dead Sea Scrolls were published. We cannot let that happen with the Hebrew Gospels. But to get them out there, we need your help. That's what the Revelation of the Month Club does. We translate these manuscripts. I was called to go and find the manuscripts of the Hebrew Gospels. At the time, some more than a decade ago, everyone was saying they don't exist. They never existed. We found dozens of manuscripts, and now we have acquired them. I went to Israel, England, France, Spain, Italy, and now we have members all over the world searching out these manuscripts and getting them for us. And now, as a result of our work, they are starting to be translated. And we don't want you to have to wait. We want to send you chapters of the Hebrew Gospels as soon as they are translated. We want to bring it to your door. For a monthly donation, we will bring these into your home because you're the ones that are making it happen. So we want you to get a first look at everything. These are priceless manuscripts. We've spent untold $1,000 getting them. And the price of doing this and bringing this message to you on video is costly. So with your support, we can make this happen. So go to writingofgod.com right now and become a subscriber to the Revelation of the Month Club and find the Hebrew Gospels in your inbox tomorrow. We're going to bring you more on the next episode of The Writing of God.
Send your gift to The Writing of God, P.O. Box 294027, Kerrville, Texas 78029, or online at thewritingofgod.com. That's The Writing of God, P.O. Box 294047, Kerrville, Texas 78029, or online at thewritingofgod.com.